All right, here we go. Getting ready to create a brand new document. What we want to do is create a drop shadow and a stroke around one of our images. So what we need to do is determine the size of the image that we want to have um, for your drop shadow and stuff and everything else. Okay, so anyways, let's determine the size of the image we want to go with. This is a size that I have chosen for a variety of reasons. It doesn't really matter, all right? But this is the size of the what I'm going to call a placeholder image, and I'm going to be using this or testing this out as far as size is concerned for my Adobe Portfolio website, at least one of them. So let's get together. Let's get this going and go File, New, and create a document the size that you want. Don't know what you want, but I'm just going to show you what I have here, and we can see that this is 696 wide, 395 high, and the resolution is 72 for whatever reason. I'm sure we can have a long discussion on resolution and everything else. Okay, so now what we need to do is need to determine the area, and I've got the rectangular marquee tool selected right now. We need to determine the area that we want to have our image live in, and then our stroke go along this edges, or these edges, if you will, and then have a drop shadow that comes down. And I like my drop shadows to look like the sun or the light is coming from the upper left, coming down over there. All right, so in order to determine the border on here, and I want my border to be even all around, so what I'm going to do is deselect this guy so it's not active. But notice up here, while we have the marquee tool selected, we have an options bar. And this options bar will change based on what tool you have selected to give you options for that specific tool. Anyways, under style, we have three options: normal, fixed ratio, fixed size. I'm going to choose fixed size. And right now, this is leading me into inches. And since I'm dealing with web stuff, I don't want inches, I want pixels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose 21 and hit the tab key. I can go 20. I mean, it doesn't really matter. All right, and then I'm going to repeat this by going 21 space px. If you don't put in the space px, the software may assume you're working with inches. So let's just do that. And then what I need to do is come over to my layers panel, and at the bottom, click on the create new layer. So I have that guy there. And I could call this black square 1 if I wanted to, by double clicking there and just calling it V1. And then click anywhere in the document, hit the D key, or come over here in the bottom part of the toolbar. You're going to see that we have our foreground and background colors, and if they're not black on white, just hit your D key. That will set them to their defaults. Now that I have black as my foreground color, I can actually just hold down the option key and let's undo that. I can hold down my it's my option key to do that, or I'm going to undo that. I'm going to go under Edit, Fill, and from here, I'm going to choose foreground color, foreground color, foreground color is black. So there we go. So I have the first one. Now I want to get rid of the marching ants, so I'm going to go under Select and choose Deselect. And then I'm going to go to the tool panel, and I'm going to choose the Move tool. And what I want to do is I want to place this guy up in this corner, precisely. All right, and the easiest way to do that is to go back over to your Layers panel, and with your newly created layer as your active layer, hold down the Command key and click the background layer to have both of them selected. Now you'll see with the Move tool selected, we have these alignment options, and I want to go to the left side, so I click on this guy, and I want to go to the top, so I click on that guy. And then I come over to my layers panel and click on black square 1 to release it from being connected to the background layer. Okay, now I want to duplicate this black square. So Command or Control J to duplicate. Notice it says black square copy, and that is the active layer right now. Holding down the Command key on the Mac and clicking on background. Now I have two layers selected, but they're not continuous. All right. And then what I want to do is I want to move that over to here. So now I just come over and click on this guy. And because it's already aligned to the top, it just needs to be aligned to the bottom. Okay. Now I want to create another new layer. So Command or Control J. And then while still holding the Command key down, I'm going to select the background. So those guys are there. And what I want to do now is I want to drop her down to the bottom. So I do that, and notice it's dropped to the bottom. Now I'm going to come back over to the layers panel, click on the top layer to release it from the background, create another layer, Command J, and then Command click the background, and then come over to the options bar and click on the align left. There we go. We've got them all aligned. All right. So now I'm just going to click on the background layer to just have that as my active thing. Okay. So now that we have these guys in here, we need to take the marquee tool and then I would start in the upper left and click and drag down to the lower right. But to make sure that everything goes perfect, what you do is you put your cursor up in the measurement portion of the document window at the top here. Put your cursor in there, click, hold, and drag down, and you're going to drag down until you get to there and release the mouse. Now we have a guide. And then I'm going to repeat that by dragging down and going to this guy. And then I'm going to go to the left side of the document window and go into the measurement aspect of it and click, hold, and drag. And repeat again, click, hold, and drag. Now, the reason why I'm using this is because once we grab the marquee tool and get our cursor close to a guide, it'll snap to the guide. So there's no messing things up. All right. Now, before we do that, why don't we get rid of these layers, because we don't need these black square layers anymore. They were just there to allow us to set up the guide. So select bottom layer, bottom first, black square layer, hold the shift key down, grab those guys, and then just drag these guys down to the little trash can at the bottom of the layers panel. Good to see. All right. Then we can come over here and grab the marquee tool. Place the cursor right up in here. Oops, I'm sorry. Let's do something up here. Go back to normal. Sorry. And then come and click and hold and drag. Now that I've got that set up, what I need to do is I need to have a new layer over here with filled pixel area that matches this. The easiest thing to do at this point is just to do a Command or Control J that will jump what was ever in the marquee from the bottom layer to the new layer. And if I click on the eyeball for background, you can see that we've achieved that. So this is good news. I want to temporarily hide my guides. So Command or Control colon will do that. And if you hold Command or Control colon again, you'll bring them back. All right, good. Okay. So now with this layer here, and I'm just going to call this placeholder and hit the enter key. Good. And then with that as my active layer, I'm going to go down to the bottom of the layers panel where you see the lowercase f and x. Click on that. You're going to get a contextual menu. I'm going to choose stroke. And in the layer style dialog box, I have chosen a size of 2. It looks pretty good. And for position, I've chosen inside, so I can get those 90-degree corners. If you wanted to have round corners, choose outside. They are round. If you zoomed in hard enough, you'd see that they're round. Okay, but I want them like that. The color is going to be your foreground color. So we're good with that. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is create a drop shadow where the shadow is on the bottom and right side. So I'm going to come over here and click on drop shadow. Click on the word drop shadow. We get this stuff showing up. And right now the angle of the drop shadow is coming from the 12 o'clock position, straight up, going straight down. We're at 1 and 1, so that's not going to work. So let's just randomly put in 5 and for distance and 5 for size. Now we're starting to see something. Do you see that down there? Okay, but I want it to come here and here. So I need to change the angle. So I just come in here and I'm going to type 137. Seems to work out well for me. All right, 137. And in this case, I've got a 5 and the other thing, and the opacity is at 20. If you want this to be darker, you can go darker. I would not suggest it, but you can do that. And of course, these guys here will change the look of your drop shadow. Don't want that either, so I'm just going to go to 35. And that gives me a good density. And then if you want, you can actually create a new style, but that's for another tutorial. So let's just click OK. And now you can see the effects and they're displayed here. If you want to change something, just double click on the word effects. If you want to, that'll bring up the dialog box, probably in the same manner that I originally got the dialog box up. But if you want to just affect the drop shadow or just the stroke, double click stroke and you'll be in that portion, all right, that portion of the dialog box. All right, drop shadow, see, it's right there. It's kind of cool that we can do that. All right, so now that I've got that going on, if you don't want this stuff showing all the time, come over here to where you see the lowercase f and x and the up pointing arrow. We'll just collapse that stuff. And then if you want to show it again, just click on the down pointing arrow to do that. Very good. All righty then. So now what we need to do is do a file save as. And in here, I'm going to give it a name. And I'm just going to call this Adobe Portfolio placeholder. I'm sure we can come up with a shorter name and all that kind of stuff. It really doesn't matter. So I'm going to put it on the desktop and I'm going to create a new folder. And this is going to be, what am I going to call this? I'm going to call this stroke and drop shadow. All right, there we go. So now, and I'm going to put this in there, and that's it. So now it's saved. Awesome. What we need to do now is find an image that we want to put in here. So theoretically, we should have all this stuff lined up before we're going, but I'm just doing this off the seat of my pants, so I'm just going to go